So I'm doing this video because I thought this was an important part of most of my videos that I've done. This is in regard to the virus, the coronavirus. And so I found this video out of AOL, or this article rather. I said I found this video, but this is my video. But the article, it begins off talking about pretty much before I even read this article, it's just getting ready to tell you. I probably think that this is the most article. I would say it's the most realist article about our present state in terms of COVID-19. It's the most honest truth outside of all the other articles that where they were predicting that they were going to fix these problems. And, we've been hearing a series of stories that haven't always been true. And it's what most of us probably already suspected, that there's people that just don't know what to do. And it says, we need to live with it. So White House, now this may seem like bad news to some people, and it probably, in some sense of the word, it is, because before I go into this article, I read multiple articles, and the reason why I'm reading this one in particular is because it actually tells the truth about what's going on in terms of their progress in this disease, this fight of this disease. And whomever the people are, Carol E. Lee and Christian Welker and Monica Alba, pretty much hit home when they wrote this article, because it says Washington, it says we need to live with White House readies new message for the nation on coronavirus, which is COVID-19. And it's going to go into a more valid statements on what the progress of this whole thing. So after several months of mixed messages on the coronavirus pandemic, the White House is settling on a new one: learn to live with it. So the administration officials are planning to intensify what they hope is a sharper and less conflicting message of the pandemic next week, according to senior administrator officials, after struggling to offer clear directives amid a crippling surge in cases across the country. So on Thursday, the United States reported more than 55,000 cases of coronavirus, and the infection rates were hitting new records in multiple states. So in the beginning, we saw a lot of tragedy, and I believe it started in Italy, Wuhan, and then Italy, moved on to Italy, and then New York. And then there was a period of let's prepare, let's wear face coverings, and people started to mobilize in different cities and states, and then there was a slowing of the spread of this virus. And then you had a series of people for one while who were trying to figure out what they were going to do with this whole thing. And they started scrambling to try to find answers, to learn about the virus in record time. And in such a short time, some people have come up with some potential vaccines, but it's not 100%. And where we are at now, I believe they come up with some new developments on vaccines. But as of yet, in terms of what I know, in terms of these vaccines that they've come up with, I know there was Remdesivir was one of them, and there's a company called Pfizer that also has come up with their own version of a vaccine, which shows somewhat promising results. But we have yet to see in larger numbers of people if there's any side effects, if there's any other positive results. And that's where we're at right now. I know for a moment you had people that were protesting about their civil or constitutional right to, not have to abide by some of the safety precautions. And I believe the safety precautions and protocols that they put out in some of the mayors have warned, people in cities in various states to protect themselves from this deadly virus or heavily infectious virus. So some people were all for protecting themselves because they're unsure of the severity of how it would do with their body, and then others have their own mixed opinions, fear that maybe there's something that isn't real about it, that we're just being controlled. I've heard those comments from some people. Yet the surge was happening, and then it started to slow, and then you had multiple protests to try to reopen certain public places, and now we have actually gone further back into starting all over again with containment of the COVID-19. And so this article, so far what I read, it said that U.S. is reported more than 55,000 new cases of coronavirus and infection rates that were hitting new records in multiple states. And I just feel like, as others have felt, like we opened up things too soon. When we were jumping the gun, like opening up businesses too fast, and not really having all the answers. And so, at the crux of the message, going back to the article, it says officials said is a recognition by the White House. And this right here is pretty much expressing what they've come up with, their developments on this. That the virus is not going away anytime soon. That's the unfortunate truth. And we will be around, it'll be around. The virus will be around through November's election as well. So as a result, President Donald Trump's top advisors plan to argue the country must figure out how to press forward despite it. So therapeutic drugs will be showcased as a key component for doing that, and the White House will be increasing emphasize the relatively low risk Americans have of dying from the virus, officials said. So that's probably the biggest fear that people have right now, is contracting it. How is it going to feel? Are they going to be really, really sick, deathly ill, or are they going to be dying? There is a projected, you know, in terms of what we see the surge of this, that some people may be able to get through it and others may not. That's the honest truth of the matter. And so, like it says here, they had come up with some new drugs, but we have yet to see what the results of all of that is. And I'm just telling you this from the side of somebody that's also concerned, looking at all of this so thus far, how we've come on this whole issue. Um, so when it goes on to read, you have here, it says, for nearly 6 months, the administration offered a series of predictions. Okay, so this is what some of us may have been familiar with hearing within the 6 months. Okay, so a series of predictions and pronouncements that never came to fruition. Okay, so here it goes. From Trump promising that the problem goes away in April and predicting packed churches all over the country on Easter Sunday, to Vice President Mike Pence's claim that by Memorial Day weekend we will have the coronavirus epidemic behind us, to Jared Kushner's pronouncement the country would be really rocking again by July. And we're in July, and it is spreading faster than ever before. So, because Americans were on the other side of the medical aspect of this. So, this all followed the White House's initial message in January that the virus wasn't a threat at all. So, asked if he was worried about a pandemic, Trump said at the time, it's one person coming in from China and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine. So those were some of the messages that we were getting early on, within the 6 months. And so the message then morphed into the idea that the virus would be swiftly crushed by a robust federal response. We will win this war, Trump tweeted in March. So soon after, the president demanded governors open up their states. And so this was around the time where people were protesting about reopening the economy, up reopening the jobs so that the economy can thrive again. It goes into this in this paragraph. The message had morphed to the idea that the virus would be swiftly crushed by a robust federal response. We will win this war, Trump tweeted in March. So soon after the president demanded governors, he demanded them to open up their states and said that he had authority to force them to do so. Liberate Michigan, liberate Minnesota, and liberate Virginia. Okay, he wrote on Twitter in April. So within days, he decided to shift responsibility for the pandemic to the governors, saying the federal government will be watching them closely and will be there to help in many different ways. So in recent weeks, the message has been that the country is back, face coverings and social distancing are optional, even as the number of coronavirus cases across the country surged. So we have to get back to business, and we have to get back to living our lives. So can't do this any longer, Trump said in an interview with Axios last month before his campaign rally in Tulsa, where almost no one socially distanced and few people wore face masks. And I do believe it's safe. I do believe that it is safe. A number of Trump's own campaign staffers and Secret Service agents have contracted COVID-19 in Tulsa. That was when they had the rally out there. So eager to move forward and reopen the economy amid, excuse me, recession. Let me have a little bit of water here. And this was this was following all of the protests and all the cries and all the moaning from people saying, let's reopen things because our jobs are, waiting for us, and we can make this right. And they even had a woman yelling and blaring out, if you're sick, stay home. Like it was something that was really an easy fix. That's the way they made it seem, like that on television, with the people eager to move forward to reopen the economy amid a recession and a looming presidential election. The White House is now pushing acceptance. Okay, here we go with the acceptance, because they really realize that just telling people that it's going to go away is not going to solve the problem. They realize that making false claims that a holiday or a celebration, staying at home and forgetting about it, it's just going to go away. And every time you look up, it hasn't gone away. It's actually gotten worse. And so the virus is with us, but we need to live with it. This is what we're hearing now. This is the new message, which is the message we probably should have always been listening to, or should have heard in the beginning, had they had told the real honest truth of the matter of this, is that they don't have all the answers. They don't know enough about this virus. They're studying and they're trying to come up with different medications to try to see if they can stop the spread of this. That's all they needed to do and say in the beginning, instead of promising all of these false promises and getting people's hopes up high for something that isn't going to happen really relatively soon. So this is their stance now. The virus is with us, but we need to live with it, is how one official said the administration plans to message on this pandemic, because it's spreading so fast since they went ahead and fell under the public pressure of a few who wanted to open up things. And you got your wish, and you also got more disease. So, as often is the case with plans crafted for Trump by his aides, the question hanging over this month is whether he will stick to the script. So, Trump said this week that he's all for masks after months of resisting pressure for him to embrace face coverings. Yet, in the same interview with Fox Business on Wednesday, the president said the virus will just disappear, I hope. So he's back to that disappearing statement. So that's not the message senior administration officials said that they're preparing. And some of the president's allies have cringed when he's talked in the past about the virus disappearing, only to then see it further spread. And it is spreading like someone lit a match in a dry mountain, and it is spreading like wildfire, might I add. So next week, administration officials plan to promote a new study they say shows promising results on the therapeutics, the officials said. So they wouldn't describe the study in any further detail because they said its disclosure would be market moving. So Officials also plan to emphasize high survival rates, particularly for Americans who are within certain age groups and don't have underlying conditions. So these are the grim facts. If you don't have underlying conditions, if you're within certain age groups, you might be able to fare better or do well under the circumstance of COVID-19, is what these messages sound like they're aiming at. The overall death rate from COVID-19 in the U.S. has been on the decline, however, they've said. And that's probably with some of the medications that they do have now, but we don't know what those side effects are. We don't know what people are going to say is happening to them from taking the medication, so I can't give you information on that until they have more data, more people that come out and say, oh, I took this medicine and it made me feel great, or it made me feel lousy, or I have to be on it for the rest of my life. We don't know what those results are going to wind up saying in several months to come. So we'll just have to wait and see. Those are new developments, I believe. Those are probably going to be new things that we're going to be hearing about. The aftermath, people who have survived, getting the disease and taking medications, what that feels like. That's going to be a whole nother story in the next year or so. So more than 130,000 Americans have died of COVID-19, this virus. So Trump is expected to be briefed by Dr. Deborah Birx, one of the most visible members of the White House coronavirus task force, before Monday on her assessment of new hotspots that she visited this week, including what governors have said they need and how the new surge is affecting minority communities, officials said. Birx was in Florida, Texas, and Arizona this week. So those are some of the places that are really getting hit hard with this virus that I've seen on news feeds. So one of the officials indicated that the coronavirus task force meetings and public briefings will be more frequent, a shift already underway this week. So those meetings and briefings were daily for much of March and April, but they tapered off when Trump pivoted to focus on the need to reopen the economy. So nearly 20 million Americans are now jobless, and the unemployment rate remains in a double digits despite the record drop in the past month. So recent public briefings from the task force so far have taken place outside the White House complex. So members of the coronavirus task force, led by Pence, have taken questions from reporters 5 times in 5 different places, ranging from the Department of Health and Humane Services to various Sunbelt coronavirus hotspots. So one official said moving the briefing location is an attempt to minimize questions. So from the White House press corps. So another said that it was also designed to prevent Trump from being tempted to take over the briefings. So some of Trump's allies had lamented that he was hurting himself politically by spending sometimes 2 hours at the podium sparring with reporters and often veering off the topic rather than conveying a specific message about the pandemic. So in recent days, however, Trump personally asked the task force to resume briefings, but decided that he would not participate in them, according to 3 White House officials. So the change comes as multiple recent national polls show that Trump's trailing presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. So on Thursday, the president claimed that when Pence had a recent call with governors and asked the state executives what they may need or they might need, none of them requested federal assistance. Okay, so not one governor needed anything. They don't need anything. They have all the medical equipment they can have. Thank you, U.S. government, Trump said. But as Pence has crisscrossed the country this week visiting places with coronavirus or virus outbreaks, such as Dallas, Phoenix, and Tampa, he has been quick to note several requests from the governors of those states in real time. So, for example, Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Sunday expressed a desire to continue federal funding for testing sites in his state that was set to end in June. So Pence agreed and promised to extend that every bit as long as Texas wants us to, noting that this is all hands on deck during a brief or a press briefing with other members of the coronavirus task force. So in Arizona on Wednesday, Pence noted that Governor Doug Ducey requested additional medical personnel during their meeting, and the vice president subsequently instructed the acting secretary of Homeland Security to move out immediately on providing the additional doctors and nurses and technical personnel. So throughout his travels, Pence has been accompanied by Dr. Birx, a trend that is expected to continue in the coming weeks, according to a person close to the task force. And so Dr. Anthony Fauci, now before I mention what he's going to say, he's basically going to be a no holds barred truth teller in his statement. And I want you to listen to this because this is pretty much going to say how things are going to go. And it depends on the shifts of how people's attitudes are, the protocols, safety, how people stay safe or maintain safety, and what they do from this point on. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, for his part, has been issuing dire warnings on the future of the pandemic from other perches. So he testified on Capitol Hill this week that if the current trends continue, Americans could see as many as 100,000 new cases daily. That's how could end up being, where more and more people could get sick or reinfected. And so it's just sort of taken off. And an interview with BBC Radio on Thursday, Fauci said, "What we have seen over the last several days is a spike in cases that are well beyond the worst spikes that we've ever seen. And so that is not good news. We've got to get that under control, or we risk an even greater outbreak in the United States." And so that is probably the most honest truth about where we stand on this COVID-19. And I'm going to leave this video as a lone video, and I'm not going to mix it with other things, other issues, because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, well, where do we stand on this? How are things going to be with this? Is there any new medicines? And this basically talks about where they are just in general on this virus, this COVID-19. And so I'm going to leave it to what your thoughts and your feedback on this whole thing may be as to where we are. It's just, I already saw this coming, and this is in my own opinion or my own statements, that, like I said earlier on in the article, as I was reading it, I felt that we as the U.S. had started opening their businesses a little too soon. They didn't have all the answers, being it so that this was a new type of disease, an old but new type of disease. And there's all these different scientists and all these different people that are working right now, scrambling to find uh, that one vaccine that will really take care of the in stopping the spread of this. And what I've been seeing on the outside of all of this is a lot of more protests, a lot of fear, a lot of other things that have been happening outside of the virus that have pretty much put people in a position where they feel as though that they're more vulnerable to either getting sick or being taken advantage of during this time of a pandemic. Um, there are also people that feel like that there's this great distrust in government officials because of some of the things I read earlier in the article, because they feel like they weren't getting the truth. And this article pretty much is coming out with probably the most honest answers as to where we are on this whole issue of the COVID-19. But I'm going to let this video go. So like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for listening. I just feel like people need to just be safe as possible. And, we all already, people have been hoping for the best, but it's like what I had been saying. It's that's probably the reason why they had implemented a lot of these, um, you know, orders from governors and mayors to close down venues because they didn't want a lot of gathering, because they were worried about people getting exposure to the virus and that the virus could spread. And that's what's been happening. We seen some huge gatherings, some huge parties, some tragedies along the way that have created more gatherings and raised a lot of concerns during this time of where people feel very vulnerable. It sounds like a lot of people feel vulnerable in terms of they lost jobs, the loss of jobs, the uncertainty of the future, the loss of life, and some people feel like their lives are not important to others, and that they're taken advantage of their civil liberties and rights. And so it's a number of things that are going on, events that are going on, and then it's also revealing a lot of things that have happened from before that are affecting people even to this day. And so that's the unfortunate truth about all of this. And so people have time to sit and focus on the things that they worked all this time, and they realize, wow, it comes down to this. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. So all we can do is wait and keep our eyes and ears open and stay vigilant and be prepared to hear these messages that are coming forward. I think now some people can pretty much see on their own or decide on their own what is real and what is not really being conveyed clearly. I feel like in the beginning they should have just said, we really don't have all the answers. We don't know when this is going to end, but these are the precautionary measures that we're going to use. Some have been saying that some public figures have been saying these things, but I don't think people were really taking it serious enough. Um, well, maybe now that, unfortunately, that it is spreading more, maybe more people will take it more serious. Thanks for listening.